Murder is a common theme in detective stories, so it comes as no surprise that in most Detective Conan episodes at least one person kicks the bucket. And with over 1000 episodes so far, that makes up for a lot of dead people. The funeral business sure must be blooming in Japan. Anyway, while this is commonly accomplished with the common methods of poison, stabbing, shooting, strangulation, and so on, every now and then you get a creative murder weapon where something really weird is used. And occasionally just something random is used that's close to the person who wants to kill somebody. And with how weird some anime original episodes are, yeah, there are a decent number of candidates for this video. So, regardless if one considers these choices as silly or clever, I thought, why not make a list of the 20 weirdest murder weapons in Detective Conan? The list is based on the anime, by the way, so it will include also episodes that are anime originals. I have also decided to include failed murder attempts on this list, since one candidate just simply cannot be ignored. I'll be using the Japanese episode count, and of course the list will also include spoilers. I won't go into detail what happens in each episode on this list, but it's hard to explain without any spoilers. So let's begin. Number 20. Starting off this countdown is episode 965. This episode might be a filler episode, but it's a very good filler episode, and on par with the canon episodes. Lots of things happen in this episode and it has a rather complex plot, so it takes a total of 4 episodes to conclude the whole thing. It also features a rather gruesome death right at the beginning, where we see a man entering a room with props. A suspicious figure is also seen in the room and he cuts the rope of one of the monster puppets, which then falls on the man and impales him with its tusks. This is quite a gruesome way to go, and don't worry, not all deaths on this countdown will be this bloody, but this certainly is a very good start to this countdown. Number 19. While a lot of murders in this series are planned, some are spontaneous. This is the case in this episode. The murder weapon, while unusual, is quickly suspected to be a coat hanger. While this filler episode does have many familiar elements to other filler episodes, some things are different. One of this is that the murder weapon got carried away by crows, and despite the suspect being obvious, the crucial evidence needs to be located first. And well, the other thing that makes this episode kind of notorious is the reason for the murder. You see, the victim had an argument with her boss, and at one point she threw a coat hanger and accidentally hit her boss. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. The murderer even tried to justify herself that she was in the right because throwing a coat hanger at someone isn't okay. You know, as ridiculous as this sounds, people in the real world have been killed for even dumber reasons. Number 18. In this episode, Conan and the Morris visit a very unusual rich lady with a rather ridiculous obsession with time. Her house is full of clocks. She makes sure that none of them are even a second behind, and she's not only cuckoo, but also nasty to everyone who doesn't live up to her demands. Rich people and their hobbies, right? Anyway, at exactly the time she blows out her birthday candles, she gets murdered. Obvious murder victim is obvious. Jokes aside, the murder weapon is missing despite her getting murdered at her birthday party in a room full of people. Not only that, but the way her blood gets splattered also indicates that something weird happened. Conan does solve the case as expected, and we find out that the ice pick-like weapon which impaled her is an umbrella, which with the help of a contraption disappeared out of the room. Number 17. Imagine just quietly leaning towards a wall in the middle of the night, smoking a cigarette, and then wham! Something kills you years before. The lung cancer you've been carefully feeding this whole time would send you 6 feet under the surface. It's certainly a death that the victim didn't see coming. It was a well-planned murder which used the darkness of the night to kill a man. The murderer made sure that the street light wasn't working and used the burning cigarette of the victim to make sure it hit the target. So what was the murder weapon which instantly disappeared after the murder? It was a weapon that the culprit built. For it, he used a special resistant sock used by hikers, and he filled it with aquarium gravel. Yes, aquarium gravel killed a man in this anime. This weight was then attached to a rope which allowed the culprit to aim at the victim's head, and just like that, the man was killed. Number 16. Rich people in this series tend to have very weird hobbies, and the case from episode 184 is no different. It is about a rich woman who is organizing charities for victims of car accidents, and she also is in possession of weird masks. The masks she is most proud of are the Gonzalez masks, created by an artist who lost everything, including his mind. So he made mask after mask, and when he finished his 200th mask, he took his life surrounded by the masks. When he was found, some masks looked like they were feasting on his blood. Since then, everyone who is in the possession of the masks was hit by tragedy and many lost their lives. This is why the new owner decided to get the help of a priest to seal the curse. Yeah, Conan's reaction to hearing this says it all. Curses aside, something was about to happen, since several people at the mansion got threatening messages. The culprit in this case did decide to be inspired by the curse, and during the night, the rich woman was murdered in a way that it looked like the masks killed her. The murder weapon itself was a knife, but it became quite apparent that no one beside the victim was in the room. Furthermore, some masks were covered in blood around their mouth, but the distribution of the blood was uneven. Conan did however figure it out how the culprit committed the murder, and you guessed it, it was done with a knife and 200 masks being stringed together. The victim had severe sleeping problems, which is why she took sleeping pills, and that's why she didn't hear how the culprit dropped mask by mask into her room. When all masks were inside, all that was needed was for the string to be pulled, and the masks with the knife ended up in a position where they can stab the victim in her bed. Number 15. This filler episode has the rather cliché start to a case where Conan and Maurice walk somewhere and they hear someone scream, and just like that they find a corpse and get involved in a case. We have 3 suspicious people present, but the murder weapon is missing. It doesn't take too long, however, for Conan to figure out what happened, and he decides to let Kogoro figure out the trick himself. And get this, the murder weapon is a weight attached to a fishing rod, and since the murderer is an excellent fisherman, he could easily hit the victim despite being on the opposite building. Number 14. Currently the filler episodes have a tendency to be quite bizarre. The episodes in question share the same writer and they absolutely don't fit in with the rest of the series, since they are over the top to the point that they remind me of a Sunday morning cartoon from the 70s. Nevertheless, one episode did make it to this countdown, since a guy drowned in a rather weird thing, and you might think, what could that be? So it isn't water, and it's also not soup, or vinegar, oil. No, it's red bean paste. Like, imagine drowning in red bean paste. What a way to go. And believe it or not, this is probably the least weird thing in the whole episode. Since the episode starts with the detective boys just going to an old house and they find some woman crushed underneath debris, she comes back to life. They faint in shock, they follow a blood trail only to find a dirty and wounded woman eating cake at a confectionery shop. She then goes to the headquarters of the confectioneries where she finds the president drowned in red bean paste, and his brother, the vice president, suspects his wife did it, so they cover each other. After seemingly everybody has an alibi, the couple gets poisoned by the woman, and then she meets the detective boys and gets confronted by Conan, who puts Kogoro to sleep, and his motionless body literally is then dancing with the culprit while Conan is solving the case using his voice. Okay, dear writer, what the hell were you smoking? Anyway, it was revealed that it was actually the wife of the vice president who was under the rubble, and she was used by the culprit to make an alibi, a really bizarre alibi at that. And of course everything fell apart like ice cream cake left in the sun. So why did she kill the man? Because he had the audacity to want to make Japanese sweets instead of Western cakes. And she later has delusions where she sees everybody's head as Western desserts. Let's just say that in case I ever make a countdown of the most insane culprits in this series, she might be the number one. And what the hell was this episode? And it's not even the worst episode from this writer. Let's just move on. Number 13. This episode is titled The Unsolvable Ice Trap, and the name is quite fitting, since the case here is quite unusual. The kids and Professor Augusta visit an ice festival and decide to sleep overnight at an ice hotel. They aren't the only ones who decide to do that. The hotel consists out of ice buildings, which have locked doors as well as sleeping bags. The village head also decides to sleep at the ice hotel, and of course he takes a VIP dome for himself, and then the next morning he's found dead in a locked room with strangulation marks on his neck as well as a burnt line on the sleeping bag. Nothing really makes sense at first, since the crime seems impossible, but that's because the culprit basically used a magic trick to pull this off. That and some knowledge of chemistry and physics. While the murder weapon is a string, there's way more to this than meets the eye. The string was actually going through the whole dome and was attached with weights on the side, and since ice melts when force is applied, but due to the cold it soon freezes back, meaning the string can actually go through the ice, and the culprit used this to lower the string to the point that it strangled the village head while he was sleeping. Since normal weights would be easily spotted, he used glass as the weight, since that can easily blend in with the ice and snow. And glass is very heavy. Also around the string he had a magnesium tape, so he could set the whole thing on fire, and that fire would go even through the ice. Number 12. Transportation devices can be lethal, both to people they hit or the people who use them, but you probably wouldn't consider a wheelchair to be capable of this. Well, this episode proves that that isn't the case, since the murder weapon in this episode is a wheelchair. The murderer made sure that the victim is intoxicated, and she put the passed out man on the wheelchair before setting it so that it would drive at full force against a window, and so it catapulted the passed out man to his death below. Ouch. There's also way more to this episode, but that's unrelated to this countdown. Number 11. Imagine using an exercise bike while being alone in your house. Now imagine suddenly getting stabbed in the back. This is a very devious murder, since the murder method involves the victim unintentionally knocking over a shelf with a knife while doing her daily routine. This gets achieved by using a thin string attached to the pedal of the bike. So using the electric bike eventually results in the top-heavy bookshelf to fall over. A knife is attached to the top of the shelf, but due to its position and the books on top of it, it was quite well hidden, especially to someone who is familiar with the environment and probably doesn't even pay attention to what's on top of a bookshelf. And all of this is achieved while the murderer is away, giving them an alibi. The only downside is that the murderer needs to be the first to discover the victim and place the shelf back to its position. Conan of course didn't fall for this trick, and so the case got solved. And this is the first part of the weirdest murder weapons on Detective Conan. The next 10 are even more bizarre. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, it really helps with the YouTube algorithm. So see you soon.